New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
Welcome to Drive Time Exchange. As rubber hits the road, hard talk meets great music. Monday to Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. on Net Radio, taking you above and beyond.
Well, everybody, good afternoon to you. And of course, welcome, Ted. Good to have you here. And if you're wondering where here is, it is New Era TT Radio, the heartbeat of the Caribbean. We take you above and beyond. And of course, yes, we are coming to you from Sweet Tea and
Tony, can you hear me?
Yeah. And of course, this is where we invite you inside of the Drive Time Exchange. We're coming to you. Don't worry, we're coming to you. The Drive Time Exchange right here on New Era TT Radio. Of course, this is where we are joined by our journalist extraordinaire, Mr. Tony Fraser. So, Tony, good afternoon to you. How are you doing?
Good afternoon to you, Charlo, and things are fine by me. I got a little bit of a scare. I went to pick up some grandchildren and I got stuck in a
somehow
traffic jam.
I'm not getting you on.
14 minutes. I was wondering if I'd get back in time, but I did. So I am good. How are things with you?
Everything is okay. You know, I myself, I was out. I got back in less like around 3:30.
Yes. So we would have been scrambling today.
Yes.
I checked my phone and I said, well, if I have to join on the phone, then so be it. But anyhow, we are here and that's wonderful. I see one of our guests is with us, Dr. Harry Ramnarine, and we are expecting our second guest, Barry Collymore. I spoke to him 5 minutes ago and he was attempting to get on. And I sent you his number, Charlo, so that if he gets into difficulty, you can give him a shout. There he is. Magically, he has appeared. Barry Collymore, how are you, my friend?
Doing well, Tony. How are you?
I am good.
Nice to see you. You're looking younger every day.
All right. I like to hear those things. I'm not too sure it's true, but what the hell? Believe it, man. Yeah. All right. So we're going to have a program today.
I don't, well, Tony, hold 1 minute. I don't know if the other guest is hearing us, you know, because he seems not to be hearing us.
Dr. Ramnarine, are you hearing us?
We are hearing him when he speaks, but he apparently he is not hearing us. Did you send me his number?
Yeah, I sent you his number. See what you can do.
Okay, let me see what I can do. In the meantime, while they talk with the other guys.
Okay. Okay. So what do we look at now? We are looking at today's medical day. We have two different elements of people dealing with medical issues. As I indicated a moment ago, we have Dr. Harry Ramnarine, who is the head of a center called Ishtara Center, a medical center. I've been to it, quite a, well, to my eyes, a complicated kind of operation, which I don't dare to describe. I will allow Dr. Ramnarine to do that himself. And he has, well, he's a doctor who practiced in conventional style in the early days after graduation. And then he moved into another kind of practice. Again, I will allow him to describe that to you.
Yeah.
We are seeing him now.
Yeah.
Dr. Ramnarine, are you hearing us?
Dr. Ramnarine, are you hearing us at all?
Right. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, great.
I see you've got some technical assistance there.
Yeah, well, I was having some problems, and so I had to
Yeah,
get one of the younger boys to do it. Yeah.
Well, it's great that you're on. As I was indicating, we are dealing with some medical issues, two different kinds of medical issues, which are different from traditional practices of medicine. One by Dr. Harry Ramnarine, who I described as a medical doctor who graduated and performed and practiced, I think he told me, Port of Spain General Hospital in the traditional kind of manner for a number of years. And then he departed into his own practice, which he has built up over the decades. He told me between 40 and 45 years. And he's going to describe and tell us what this practice is all about. As I indicated, I went to his offices and I saw some of the operations. I don't pretend to understand all of them, but that's why Dr. Ramnarine is here to illustrate and to tell our listeners and viewers what it's all about. And we also have a former colleague of mine, Barry Collymore, who was once a journalist, Charlo, but he departed from...
Always a journalist, Tony. Once a journalist, always a journalist.
All right. I usually hear that kind of story, but he departed from poor people profession and went into the hotel business. He's now a hotelier in Grenada. He is of Barbadian bliss and growing up and all of that, and he chose Grenada for some reason or the other. I'm not going to ask him why, but he has been involved in. Okay, so what I want to say as an introduction, and I'll allow Barry to go first. As I indicated, there are two different kinds of medical practices, if you like. One is homegrown by Barry Collymore, looking after his own health and coming to a point to make a determination of what he would do and what he wouldn't do. And Dr. Ramnarine, as I indicated, has researched quite a lot of work and has developed this practice, and he will describe it to our viewers and listeners. So let's start with you, Barry. Give us a sense of how did you come to the health practices that you've come to over a period of time, and why?
Okay, thank you, Tony. And good afternoon, Dr. Ramnarine. It's very nice to meet you. I think that, you know, I'm not a doctor or anything, or I have no medical training, but I think I'm a beneficiary of preventative medicine. That's what I would say. And I one of my mentors, who's a professor and a doctor in Atlanta, Dr. Edward Lane, introduced me to this type of living 20 years ago. I'm now 50 years old. And when I was 30 years old, I had very high cholesterol, extremely high. And I thought at that time I would have to do go on these statins and that kind of thing too. And Dr. Lane said to me, Barry, here's what we're going to do with you and your life and so on. We're going to avoid disease. We're going to prevent disease. You're going to live a life that gives you a better chance of preventing disease. And if you listen to what I am prescribing for you, you will avoid traditional medicine. And that involved, at that time, it was, no one was talking about wellness at that time. Dr. Lane was. I'm sure maybe Dr. Ramnarine was as well, but maybe no one was listening to him at that time. But that involved diet. And when I say diet, I don't mean going on a diet. It meant changing the way I think about food. It involved exercise, again, not just going and going to the gym and fall. It involved incorporating exercise every single day into my routine without a break, every day. It involved avoiding stress as much as possible, and it involved sleep. You had to sleep 8 hours. You have to get into your bed. You have to sleep. And also, it involved something which was not even which kind of contradicts some of that, but it also involved community and getting out there and being among people that are positive and that kind of thing. So my journey in terms of medicine and was all of those, and then the backbone of all of that was getting regular blood tests, regular checks every year, a very comprehensive round of tests, blood tests, etc. Getting all of these procedures done to check whether or not to kind of prevent things. This has now gone on for 20 years, and some of these things are more advanced. I do a lot of advanced things now, but what I want to say is that my journey in life and so on, and I praise God that I had the influence of Dr. Lane at that time 20 years ago. Been focused on preventing disease, keeping myself healthy, keeping my mind healthy, and yeah, I think it's worked tremendously.
Okay, that's Barry's opening statement. Let me go to Dr. Ramnarine to give us an indication. Perhaps you can start at the point where you gave up on traditional practice at the hospital and developed your own practice, as it were, in your own. Sorry, I didn't call the name of the place that he operates from. It's called Ishtara Center. It's in central Trinidad, as I indicated. It seems like a quite complex operation to my innocent eyes, as it were. And so give us an appreciation, Dr. Ramnarine, of your shift from traditional medicine to this practice that you developed subsequent to your first training and induction into the practice of medicine.
Hi, Tony and Barry. Good to see you all too. And my voice isn't the best today, but I will try my best to see what I can do.
So you need to work on yourself, right?
Yes. So now, I do not see what I do as different from medicine. I think there's a spectrum. Barry spoke about the preventive aspect of medicine and what we need to do on a regular basis. And I will come back to that in a minute. But what I do is what I consider to be medicine. And I'll explain to you what I'm talking about. We can go back to the basis of what is physical reality. And if you take anything that is an object or something that is solid, even if it's a piece of gold, it is made up of three components: matter, energy, and energy can be referred to as vibrations, and then you're dealing with information. I call it the holy triad in everything that is physical on this planet. So if we apply that to our bodies, we have a material physical body, and we have an energy system that runs the physical body. Now, the energy system has two components. One component is electricity between your brain and the rest of your body, and the body and the brain is always a constant feedback, and energy is flowing as electrical energy between brain and body and body and brain. And then the next component, which is not known a lot but has been well established in Germany, is the concept of biophotons. Now, in 1982, I met with Fritz Albert Popp, I think he's passed on now, it's a few years ago. And he called himself a biophysicist, meaning the physics of the biological system. And I was inspired by him a lot. And he spoke about photons. He was the one who discovered that every cell in your body generates light just like the sunlight. And he referred to it as biophotons. Now, what I'm talking about, when I left the hospital many years ago, after spending about 5 years plus, I didn't think that I was going to do something different from the practice of medicine. Because when we look at the physical body, what we study as the science of the body is anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry. That's the physical aspect. All the chemistry is that's physical. When you go to the next level, you're talking about energy and electricity, electrical influence throughout the entire body. And you're looking at photons. Biophotons is well established in the medical field in Germany, in Europe. I have seen a lot of research done by Fritz Albert Popp about biophotons. Your body, cell to cell, communicates at the speed of light through biophotons. But yet we don't consider that in the Western medicine. So we should be bringing that into the medical field because that's a reality. But up to now, after all these years, since 1982, I don't know even if at UWI we are talking about biophotons. And that's a reality. It's not hearsay and it's not a myth. The next level of our cells would be the informational level. And the informational level or field is made up of two components. The first component is all the genetic data that we are carrying, all of us are carrying from our ancestors, our parents, grandparents, and so on. That, to my mind, we are loaded with that information at a genetic level, at a genomic level. But here's what. The genetics may or may not cause a disease. Generally, the genetics is all a predisposition or a potential for a disease. But what generates disease actually is the epigenetics. In quantum biology, that's what we call it, epigenetics. And the epigenetics, translated at a layman's level, is nothing but your lifestyle. How you think, how you act, how you eat, and so on, how you behave, how you treat other people, and so on. And it is the epigenetics that activates the genes to create a disease, right? Now, going back to your question, Tony, I didn't see myself doing anything different but medicine because what I did is over the years, I developed a system called biomathematics. And biomathematics is dealing purely with algorithms. And an algorithm for the layperson is simply a mathematical construct to create a specific effect. And we know if you have cell phones, your cell phones, you have apps on them. They're all algorithms. You can change lights and change colors. You can open a door, a deadbolt. You can close the door. All of that with information. So we're not talking about anything outside of mainstream science, the science of medicine. The thing is that Western medicine, as we know it and I was trained in, we are just dealing with the physical level and the biochemistry. Let me give you an example. When I was a student, I asked the psychiatrist, explain to me what mental illness is all about. And you know what the answer was? It's a biochemical change in your brain. It's all biochemistry in your brain. No more than that. And you get medication that will manipulate that and normalize it. So another aspect of all that I'm talking about is that I can tell you, I have taken almost every drug that is available from the pharmacy. And we talk about spin in medicine. Spin. Everything is about spin. Let me explain. Spin is right spin or it could be left spin. And sometimes there's no spin, a stillness. So let's call it 3 spins, even though it's just 2, left and right. Do you know that all medical drugs that I've tested, they're all right spin? All herbal remedies that I've tested, they're all left spin. The difference is that left spin medicines, they work through nourishment of the body, nourishing the body. So plants, your food, they're all left spin.
Yeah. Dr. Ramnarine, let me ask you to explain a little bit more of this terminology or description of spin. What exactly do you mean by spin?
Right. In chemistry, we understand isomers. we study isomers. You can have the same molecule with a right spin dextro rotation or levo rotation, and they're acting as two different molecules because of the spin. So that's normal in chemistry. You have left spin and right spin. It's called D-lactic acid or L-lactic acid, which is lactic acid functioning and spinning in one direction and another direction. So that's basic chemistry. Now, in terms of spin, I could tell you, if a man is passing urine, the urine never comes out in a straight line. It is always in a spiral. When water is coming from the earth, it is in a spiral, a spin. When you flush a toilet, the water goes around in a spin as well. When the heart contracts and ejects the blood out of the heart into the vessels, it comes out in a spin as well. If that blood is flowing out in a linear fashion, something is wrong with the heart muscle. Exactly. So everything is about spin. The earth is spinning around this axis, and while it's doing that, it's spinning around the sun as well. So everything in life is about spin.
Okay.
So when we look at all pharmaceutical drugs, there's a place for pharmaceutical drugs, I will tell you. They're all right spin. I've tested almost every one that is available in Trinidad. Now, right spin medicines, I would consider them to be fighters. Let me give you an example. When you have pain, what do you get? A painkiller. When you have inflammation, you get an anti-inflammatory. When you have a bacteria, you get an antibiotic. I'm just giving you general broad concepts, right? So we're talking about right spin medicine, which do have a place in the practice of medicine. And I'm not against medical drugs. The thing is, we disregard left spin medicine, which is about food and herbs that can have healing effects on the body. In fact, there's a particular herb called moringa. What I've researched moringa extensively through testing, my patients. And there's an enzyme called MTHFR, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. That enzyme moves food and nutrients into the cell across the cell membrane. Now, when an organ is sick, the organ becomes malnourished as well, because that organ is not producing as much enzyme to act. And what I have found, I've tested hundreds of things, and I found moringa in the diet enhances that enzyme so that the body can nourish itself even in a more effective way. But back to your concept of spin. So there's left spin and right spin. And we consider zero spin as also important, because zero spin is when all of us get into a still state where the mind stops. There's no activity. And you remember that everybody who does meditation, they go into that state and they are connected to the source of life.
Okay.
So
all right.
That would explain spin in a general sense.
Right. I want to go back to Barry now to ask him about whether or not you consume the regular kinds of medications, that you pick up in the pharmacy, prescribed by a doctor on occasion and so on. Since you've come to this realization about your health, do you still take the medications that you find in the pharmacies?
Yeah, of course, Tony. If I'm ill, you have to do it. It's just something you have to do, and I always follow my doctor's advice. I have good doctors, and I follow their advice. But what I'm trying to do with my own self is to prevent illness. So that's one of my daily goals, is to prevent illness. This is something that I think that we as a region, governments, everybody should be focused on that. Because why?
So what's the road that you travel to avoid and to prevent the illnesses coming upon you?
It starts with your daily habits. Do you, and this is from a layman's point of view. You need to check this, of course. This is just my view, and I am not a doctor. This is advice given to me that I've put into practice that I think has worked for me so far. So let me just start with that caveat. But for me, My health is a daily, hourly priority. It is not something that it is as important as everything else important in my life. My health. It is more important to me than money. It is the most important thing, or one of the most important things. Children, of course, are but you can't look after your children if you're not in good health. You know what I mean? So that kind of thing. I think that prevention of disease and prevention of it should be one of the most important goals for governments, health practitioners, if something across the region. Why? Because everywhere in the Caribbean, we have finite resources, and a lot of our resources are going towards battling non-communicable diseases, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes. We are spending so much resources on acting after the fact, or we are condemning people to, you are a diabetic and you take diabetic medication. Let me give you an example. I had my blood pressure was creeping up on me last year, and I went, I take my blood pressure. It's something I take 2 or 3 times a week. Once I am in a good space, if I have an issue, I have to take it every day. So my doctor I said to him, I said, look, I've checked this over a few months now, and it is continuing to be high. I think I have high blood pressure. And my doctor said, no, you don't have high blood pressure, Barry. Your blood pressure is high. He said, let us fix that. Let us find the cause of why your blood pressure is high. The normal route would be, you have high blood pressure, you go on high blood pressure medication, and then you're a man that has hypertension. My doctor says, no, Barry, you don't have high blood pressure. Your blood pressure is high. And then we found the root of it. We went through. We sat together and we went through a long list of different things. And he said to me, I want you to do 2 things. I want you to eliminate coffee, and I want you to eliminate alcohol. And I did both of them. And then we deduced finally that it was the coffee. Now let me explain about coffee. I love coffee. If it's one thing that it's my favorite drink, it's coffee. But I was drinking 3 or 4 or sometimes 5 espresso shots in a day. And sometimes I was drinking them quite late because I'd have late meetings, and I'd have an espresso for dinner at dinner time. I have a lot of meetings in the evening, entertaining people. And what he actually found was that the caffeine at night especially was interrupting my sleep. So although I was sleeping, I wasn't sleeping. So I came off of coffee. It was very rough coming off. I can tell you that. It was very, very rough coming off of coffee. I now haven't had a coffee for a very long time. But once I did that, my blood pressure came back down to normal. Now bear this in mind. I exercise every single day. I eat properly, and I sleep, and I know I sleep properly. So I'm not saying that will work for everybody, but I think that there are certain things that if you have imbalance, I think you can give yourself a better chance of avoiding disease. And the other thing that is under all of this is you have to get checked. You've got to get all the checks done, your colonoscopy, your full panel blood tests once or twice a year, depending on your risk. You've got to women have to have their female checks. You've got to get properly checked. We in the Caribbean only go, especially men, we only go to the doctor when we fall down, when something has gone drastically wrong. I am saying that we need to change the way that we think about health and about medicine. We need to prevent things. We need to do things like, for instance, from a government standpoint and from a education standpoint, physical education should be on the curriculum of schools every single day. Why are we teaching children that they can exercise 1 day a week in school? Why are we teaching children that? Why we have PE 1 day a week? Why are we giving kids bad food, in teaching them to eat bad food so don't you think they'll continue it when they grow up? And why are we thinking that we can build more and more hospital beds all the time, build bigger hospitals to catch up with the amount of people that are sick? No, let us keep people out of hospitals. Let us let us do all we can, put more money into preventative medicine to keep people out of hospitals, because at some point the population gets sicker and sicker and sicker, and then you lose the race. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but that's from a layman's, a novice point of view. This is my belief. This is my view. It's part of my living, part of my journalistic skills, which many of you don't know, but Tony is one of my journalism mentors. He taught me journalism as a young man. But yeah, this is from that point of view, and to me, there are common sense things that we could be doing in the region to prevent illness and to prevent this health crisis, to prevent these NCDs that we are going through. You know, if you're out on the ocean and your boat has a leak, you don't solve it by putting in bigger and bigger bilge pumps to get the water out. You find the leak and you plug it, you fix it. And at some point, if we don't change the way that we approach medicine, the ship is going to sink. We will not be able to treat all of these sick people, because every day the diet is getting worse and worse every day. People are drinking more. There's more stress. At some point, the ship sinks.
All right, let me ask Dr. Ramnarine to respond to Barry's practical lifestyle, of course, with advice from his doctors. And how do you react to, his, I don't know, I wanted to call it intuitive, but it's more than intuitive. It's practical in terms of his lifestyle. How do you react to that as a healthy practice?
Well, the thing is that he has had results with what he has done. He mentioned the diagnosis of high blood pressure, and he made changes in his lifestyle by way of the caffeine and the alcohol, and eventually his pressure came back to within a normal range, right? So the thing is that the basis of, let's say, good health, I would say, is, he mentioned it. The basis is, first of all, we need light. We need sunlight, which is nothing but photons. So photons is just defined as the smallest particle of light, and our bodies respond to photons. When you go out and get sunlight, especially in the morning, when it's not dangerous and it's not really bad for your health and so on in your skin, then you can absorb a tremendous amount of energy from the sunlight. The second thing is we need to have electrons. Electrons, our bodies are electromagnetic bodies. And when the electromagnetic energy in our bodies is, let's say, high, we're in a healthy state. When it's low, we get sick. Now, how can you get free electrons for free? It's from the earth. So we are now wearing all kinds of stuff. We hardly walk around the space, but I spend, just like Barry, about 20 minutes every morning getting sunlight treatment, doing physical exercises, and I get enough electrons from the earth. The earth is free. And if you want even more from the earth, walk on the sand on the beach. If you live close to a beach, because sand is basically what is considered to be silicon. And we talk about silica and silica dioxide, which is used in computer chips to store data. So sand transmit a lot more, energies and electrons, free electrons into the body. Now, all antioxidants are also free electrons, but I get all mine from the earth as well every morning. So the next thing you need is proper sleep, which Barry alluded to and mentioned.
Sorry, Dr. Ramnarine, before you go on, let me be something of a devil's advocate here. You talk about the sunlight, and Barry talked about it also, getting your quota, as it were, of sunlight on a daily basis. And I think about these people who work in the sun on a daily basis. Sportsmen, people who work on the roads, people who work in agriculture, and so on. But yet they seem susceptible to all of the diseases that people who work in air conditioned offices for their whole lives, from the air conditioned office to their conditioned home, and they still get the same kinds of diseases. How do you explain that?
All right. We all human beings, I've discovered, we all carry a program. I call it 3Ds: disease, degeneration, death. I have asked over 40 years, every patient that came into my practice, do you think you will die someday? And everybody says to me, of course, we all will die. Okay, we can accept that. But what I'm saying to you is that I have discovered that all human beings, by the time we reach to puberty, we get into a different state of awareness and consciousness, and the programming of disease and degeneration and death starts at that point. What I remember, and I don't know much in terms of the science of it, is that when we reach puberty, we were told in medical school that the thymus gland starts to shrink. And the thymus gland is very important for your immune system. And I always wondered about that. So I think at puberty, by the time we reach that age in both males and females, we are well programmed to accept that concept of disease, degeneration, and eventually death. It's 3Ds, I call it. So that is in everyone, no matter what you do. And that's why you have to take a very active role, as Barry is pointing out, to do things that would either improve your life force and your health and your electromagnetic energy. You have to look at your diet that you consume on a daily basis. And if you look at, I'll give you one simple example. The most dangerous, let's say, food for diabetics is flour. 40 years ago, flour was not the same as what we have today. Today, we have found glyphosates in flour, which destroys your gut flora. So the more, and we consume a huge amount of flour in the Western world. Let's take Trinidad or the Caribbean. It's bread and rotis and whatever else,
Cake and this and that and the other, yeah.
So the only saving grace that I have found in my research is that if you actually ferment the flour, the enzyme generated and the good bacteria generated during the process gets rid of a lot of the crap in the flour. So that personally, I only would use sourdough bread that we make ourselves. And also if we're making rotis, it's all sourdough as well, because the process has changed the structure of and the function of the flour. But flour is more devastating for diabetics today than it was 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me see if I could understand you and perhaps convey to our listeners and viewers my own interpretation of what you've just said with regard to my cynical observation, if you like. So that, yeah, you do all of the, there are people who do all of the great things in the sun, they eat well, etc., and so on, and yet they get these diseases. Are you saying that inevitably, because I suppose of our living conditions, how we are on this planet and so on, that we are also susceptible to all of those things, but a healthy lifestyle, as you've described, gives us some kind of defense against it. Is that a correct kind of understanding of it?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Like
sorry, go ahead, Dr.
If we take water, for instance, water is so polluted on the planet today with all the stuff that goes into it. And we're drinking water, and guess what? Our body is over 70+% water. And water is so important. I would suggest that people who are listening to this restructure their water in sunlight before they drink it. Put out the water in glass bottles in the sunlight, not plastic bottles, and it will be restructured by the sunlight. I'll give you an example. If you take water and you sterilize it by whatever means, with ultraviolet or whatever, and you sterilize the bottle, and you take that water and leave it in the sunlight, after several days, you're going to form algae in there, right? That's remarkable because algae comes from a special type of cell that exists in water, which also exists in our bodies. I mean, I have discovered those cells in the human body. I call them God cells. In modern medicine, we call it the microbiome. It's a term that they have created, three different compartments. Micro is tiny or small. Bio is they're living cells. And the end of it is you have the OME, which is the genetics. So the microbiome simply means bacteria in your gut or in every part of your body, everywhere you have fluid. In fact, it's not in the gut only. We just tend to think that we only got bacteria. But you have these cells, I call them God cells because they are indestructible. They exist in the fluid in your brain, fluid in your eyes, in the semicircular canals in your air. It's in the lymph. It's everywhere you have fluid, in the blood, in the bile system. So we carry some special cells that are far more superior than what we are carrying in our bodies. And those cells are indestructible. Right? The question is, what are these cells doing there? I think that if we know how to remake this body step by step and even the organs, we can then continue to live longer lives.
Let me ask Barry, how has your life been, your health life been, since you've adopted a different kind of lifestyle?
I think that, I think that I've certainly, praise God, I've prevented reverse conditions that I have. My cholesterol is normal, my blood pressure is normal. I do tests every year, so I don't. Let me give you an example. When I did my first colonoscopy, they found polyps in my on my colon, a couple of polyps. They removed them, and the doctor looked, and then I got even more serious with my diet. The time I did my second colonoscopy, my colon looked like it looked so much better than the pictures of my first thing. So with my colon, so I think you can almost reverse things by doing what Dr. Ramnarine says is so important in terms of sunlight. I get up every morning, I get some sunlight every single morning. I'm out there running or walking or playing tennis, because and you have so much more energy. A lot of the people that work for me are younger than me, and I say to them, and we are going in meetings, and some of them are falling asleep. I said, man, come on, man, you 10 years younger than me, you're supposed to have more energy than me, And then also, like, physically, you don't have the same problems in terms of a big stomach or a lot of fat on your body and that kind of thing because you're lean. I do weight training along with conditioning, so I analyzed my body fat is now, it was at one point my body fat was at 23%. Now it's at 16%, and it's all to do with. So I think that what I'm trying to do is, we all have to die as we all know, but what I'm trying to do is to prolong the period of my life where I am considered healthy. If I can have a longer health span for my life, I may still die at 70 years old or whatever, but I may have a longer health span in terms of being healthy, being able to play sports, being able to function normally without medication, being thing that same person who somebody else who's not practicing it, they may be ill and slower than I am and not able to enjoy life as much as people think of wellness as you're not actually enjoying life more than if you're not well. So I and it's not like I'm a puritanical. I'm not, I still have, if my friends have a party or whatever, I still have a drink with them and that kind of thing, but my socialization doesn't surround alcohol. My socialization is varied, many different types of activity, and I think it makes my life more interesting.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask Dr. Ramnarine to talk about, of course, not individual patients, but as a group of people coming to you, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. Can you make an estimation as to whether or not, in a generalized kind of way, and I'm not saying this is a scientific survey, that people are healthier today than they were yesterday?
I think if you look at the lifespan of people, I think is getting less and less everywhere. The food chain is so complicated now, complex. It is so polluted. You know, if you go to the farmers market in Trinidad, and I go to at least 2 of them alternating, the products that they produce there, they cannot grow these things in a condition like what we will call organic. They all use pesticides, weedicides, all kinds of stuff to get their crops to grow. So our food that we are consuming, all filled with chemicals, no matter what you do. There are ways in which you could change this, meaning that if you know, they have traditional methods of looking at the food chain and what we could do with food. Like I give you an example of fermenting the flour and the sourdough instead of eating the normal bread, for instance. That is one way to literally reduce the amount of toxins and toxicity to the human body. So the question you're raising there is, are we at a better place today and have the possibility of living longer? I would say no. We are seeing a lot more people.
Sorry, but then how do you explain? I don't have the figures in my mind at the moment, but I am sure that the life expectancy has increased over the decades. If it were, and I'm just calling figures, if it were 65 years, 20 years ago, it is probably now 70 and creeping up all the time. But yet you are saying that given our unhealthy lifestyles, not only what we eat, but what we do is less productive. It is less likely to give you a healthy life.
Well, one of the problems we're faced with is that you see people who are living longer lives. So these are the older people, and every one of them, they are on medication to a large extent, well medicated, and it's keeping them alive and keeping them going. The question is, as Barry's putting out there, what we need is to have a healthy lifestyle where if we need medicines from time to time for short periods, that's fine. It's okay to deal with a problem. You have a virus, you have an infection, you have an abscess, whatever, you need to deal with that with medicine. But to be taking medicine constantly all the time, to me, is not the way we should go. Barry is saying, why don't we develop a healthier lifestyle, starting with the school, training the children, so that we can have, you see, the problem is not just longevity alone we want longevity with good health.
Okay.
And Barry's a good example of that. I have not taken a medical pill for about 50 years, nothing. And I've kept myself healthy, but whatever Barry is saying there, I do my exercises, all the basic things that will keep you healthy. That's what I do on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And apart from what I do in the morning.
And I was observing you, Dr. Ramnarine, when we met, and I said, this man is slim and trim and you're moving like if you're good to go.
Well, I actually get roughly about 5 hours sleep every night. I go to bed about 1:30 and wake up around 6:30 roughly.
Right.
And I'm full of energy throughout the entire day. And I can tell you why. I've discovered 3 exercises, and I'll tell you what they are. There are 3 blockages of the flow of energies in our physical body. One is happening at the sacrum. The sacrum is called the sacrum, and this is my interpretation, because it's the most important or the most sacred bone in your body. When you look at the sacrum in most people that I've examined, I would say more than 90% of the people, the sacral bone is tilted inwards and it's locked in that position, and therefore energies cannot move past it. If you look at Usain Bolt, I have examined him, look at him so many times in different postures. That bone in him is out forever. It's like that. If you look at his posture, his chest is out and his sacral bone is out. That's why he runs so fast, right? The thing is, but the average person, the sacral bone is tilted inwards. The next thing is, when you're a baby, if you look at a baby lying on a bed, when they breathe in, the belly comes up. And when they breathe out, the belly goes back in. The baby is breathing from the diaphragm. It's called diaphragmatic breathing, or you're breathing from the belly. Most adults are not breathing anymore from the belly or from the diaphragm. So we have to go back and train ourselves to make that happen. So if you can get the sacral bone out, if you could start breathing through your diaphragm again, then you're going to live a healthy, longer life. Right?
Okay, so Charles, we want to take a break now. I hope you're like me, taking in all of the lessons and hoping for a little bit extension of the life in a healthy condition, so I could look like Barry and Dr. Ramnarine in my old age. But seriously, let's take a break now, talk to our listeners and viewers where they can get into the station, and if there are persons who want to get into the conversation to talk with both Barry and Dr. Ramnarine, welcome them.
S&H Rumbox, 137 Western Main Road, St. James, for all your retail and wholesale needs for alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. Call us at 686-0599 or visit us at 137 Western Main Road, St. James. S&H Rumbox, drinking out of the box.
Don't miss Furniture Plus Inventory Blowout Sale. Get up to 65% off in-store and online. Enjoy massive savings on furniture, appliances, and more. Hurry, this deal won't last. Shop now and save big at Furniture Plus.
Advertise with us on New Era TT Radio, the fastest growing streaming platform for talk in Trinidad and Tobago. Audio and video ads welcome. Elevate your brand with us. Connect with us at newerattradio@yahoo.com or call us at 299-5156. Now, what are you waiting for?
So we welcome you back to the Drive Time Exchange on New Era TT Radio. Now, remember, you can pick us up at newerattradio.com. We stream all day, every day. New Era TT Radio on TuneIn, and that way you get us on your Google and Alexa and your smart devices, right? Of course, we're also on Facebook. You get us on YouTube. You get us on Instagram, and of course, we stream our morning show to Gael Caribbean, which takes our listeners to Amplia 107 and Digicel 107 also. Yeah, so Tony, we are back with you.
Right. Charlo, I know you have some insights into these medical things. Anything you want to ask of both Barry and Dr. Ramnarine yourself?
Actually, I'm listening to all that has been happening, and especially where Barry is concerned, in making that change, because I myself, as you get older, realize what you're eating and drinking is not probably the right sort of thing to prolong life and give you a good quality of life also. But how do you go about making that change? Where does that discipline come from for indisciplined people like myself? Take everything.
Well, that's the first thing. You have to stop thinking of yourself as indisciplined. And let me give you an example that I tell people in terms of exercise. A lot of people think of their exercise routine as something they wake up and do every day, right? So you think, okay, you this is a daily thing, and you have to do exercise. One of the things that got my me exercising more is I started counting the number of hours that I exercise per week. So I started with, I want 5 hours a week. Now my target is between 9 and 12 hours of exercise a week. Now, that might sound like a lot, but if you count it by the week and you log your exercise, get a fitness tracker. I would also advise that. Get one of those, like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or a Whoop band, one of those devices that can track your exercise. Those kinds of things can help you become more disciplined. And then in terms of diet and just try to eat whole foods as much as possible. Try to avoid sugar as much as possible. A lot of my doctors tell me, Barry, everybody demonizes salt. When sugar is one of the main things that is causing their blood pressure to rise, causing them to be unhealthy. Avoid, drink water instead of juice. That kind of thing. I have done. I don't drink any juice at all ever. I never drink a soft drink. If the only thing that I will drink that is outside of that range is I'll have wine if I'm celebrating, or if I feel like having a drink, I'll have a glass of wine or a beer. But even that, I limit it. So the main thing, Charlo, is to stop thinking of yourself as indisciplined. Try to celebrate small wins. If you can get 5 hours or 4 hours of exercise a week, then do it. And exercise doesn't mean that you are a professional. Walking is one of the best forms of exercise. People that come and tell me, "Oh, Barry, you're always running. I can't run. My knee." I said, forget running. Walk. It's one of the most natural forms of exercise. Just go for a walk every day, and you will enjoy it more and more and more. Especially if you go early in the morning, as Dr. Ramnarine says, and you get this early morning sunlight. That's one of the big highlights of my day now, is my daily exercise. Waking up, I look forward to waking up in the morning and exercising.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask Dr. Ramnarine. Barry is still a young fella, not an old man like me. And it may be that people like myself, I do exercise. I'm not as diligent as Barry. My mind works in a kind of way before I set out. Rain is going to fall. You have something to write here that is a little bit more important. It's a genius at finding all kinds of excuses not to go out and do some exercise. But is it natural, Dr. Ramnarine, and if you like, compulsory, so the older you get, the less, I was going to say inclined, but it's really not something of the mind, but it is perhaps dangerous to be exercising as if you are 25 and 30 still?
Of course, you have to be very careful, and you have to know at your age what you can do and what you cannot do. As Barry made a point here, as you get older, walking is probably one of the most important exercises that we have. And you walk with your arms moving opposite to the legs, and that brings great harmony and balance to both sides of the brain. Meaning that when you put left foot forward, your right hand should be forward, and when your right foot is forward, your left hand. So when you do that, you're in a state of balance and harmony. Now, the thing is, as we get older, I think walking should be important for everybody above 60. Because if you're not accustomed to exercising and you go there and you decide to run, you might pull a muscle, you might tear something, you damage your knees and so on. What I tell most of my elderly patients is this. When I worked in Port of Spain, I learned something interesting. When a person has lost the function of their legs, they are basically finished. Because you have to feed them in bed, you have to clean them in bed, and so on and so on. And I came out of that when every single day I do exercises for my legs. I don't go to a gym, but I do squats. I do all kinds of exercises for my legs to keep my legs strong. Because The day your legs go, that's it. You're finished. You're going to be lying on a bed and people have to look after you. What kind of life is that? So I think for everybody listening to this, work on your legs and go with it simply. Don't go and try to do too much complicated stuff with lifting a lot of heavy weights with your legs and so on. Simple things that will keep your leg muscles working and keeping your legs strong. And that's very important.
Okay. So you don't have to run 100 meters in 9 point something. You might do it in 20 point something, but at least you do it.
Yes.
Yes, and that's important. All right. What about medication now? I know Dr. Ramnarine is saying that he's not anti-medication. He still believes in medication, and he will explain what he means by that. But is medication from the pharmacy prescribed by a doctor, or just over-the-counter medication? Is that generally good? I know there can't be a one statement on medication, but is that generally good, or does one have to be conscious of over-medicating? I think that's a medical term that I heard somewhere. Yes, Dr. Ramnarine?
Well, I see a lot of polypharmacy because patients come to see me and they're on like about 12 different medicines, and I wonder where they have space in their stomach for food when you have to take all these medicines, And I think we generally tend to overprescribe medications. I feel that when a patient has a chronic illness, you should look at the minimum amount of drugs or medication that they need. You see, like I said before, early on, is that you have medicines operating at a physical level. You have physical medicine, that is chemistry. All medical drugs are chemistry. They're all chemicals. There's a role for that. But you also have healing agents, or you can call it medicine, in the herbal realm as well. All right, and there are lots of different herbs that have been researched over the years that are still in use today. The herb medicines, they take a longer time to work. When I mentioned the word right spin medicine, which is all medical drugs, they work quickly. They get results quickly. You have pains, you take a painkiller, you get relief. All our medicines that we create in our practice, because I'm into biomathematics, that's my research area for the last 40 years, into biomathematics, the mathematics of the physical body. What we have done is to create algorithms, and I don't know if anybody else is doing that, but with these algorithms, we can actually identify and make an accurate diagnosis of people when we see them, patients when we see them. And based on that, we can then determine, for instance, what type of remedies you need. In our practice, we may still occasionally prescribe a medical drug if it's needed. So in my practice, what I look at is what does the patient need at this moment to help to solve the problem? And that's what I prescribe. But most of the times we use, as I said, there's no difference. When you look at matter, energy, information, there are medicines that are informational medicines too. And that's in the field of biomathematics, where you're informing the structure, the patient, working through the liver, the intestines, and the immune system, and so on, the nerve system, to heal in the body. You're instructing the body to heal. And that's data. So most of my medicine that I prescribe, I create them using algorithms.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask Barry.
As scientific as you can get it, because the world is run with algorithms today.
Yeah. Both Barry and Dr. Ramnarine, traditional medicine, and what I mean by traditional medicine, the kind of medicine that our parents and grandparents developed, vervine for this, Christmas bush for that, etc. Some doctors that I have both interviewed from a journalistic position, not looking after my own health, they seem to go crazy if you say that some kind of fruit or some kind of fish or something like that makes you feel better, deals better with whatever your medical problem is than something you get from the pharmacy. What has been your experience in that regard, Barry? The things that you take from the environment, the things that perhaps our grandparents took in their early use.
Well, I think that our grandparents lived in a healthier environment in general. There are less toxins around. The earth was less polluted. There was less of all of that. I think that they did not live this sedentary lifestyle that many of us live today. And also the foods that they ate a lot of them were whole foods, not highly processed, not with a lot of chemicals, etc. And this is why you see in many countries in the Caribbean, for instance, a high number of centenarians of that time. Some of them did not have, we would not have had the diagnostic testing that is done today in those days. But I think people lived generally a healthier lifestyle in those days than they did today. By the nature of the society, allowed them to live that healthier lifestyle. I think that some of the things that they did, I think, are very good. My grandmother did from a spiritual and point of view. She would do prayer and fast. She would fast and pray during the day, and you think that that's a religious thing and that's thing, but fasting now has come out medically to be something that is very, very good for you once you understand how to do it. But this is something that the old people would have done. Also, certain herbs and things that they would have taken almost every day. Some of the things, for instance, things that caused you to clean your system out. These are things now that people are using in traditional medicine. I think that non-traditional medicine, these herbs and so on, I don't think there's any silver bullet for anything. So there's some people that say, take this bush and you that kind of thing, or take that. But I think that, and as Dr. Ramnarine says, some of these things are not fast acting. So it's not like you take that in it. But I think there are many things that we can use from fasting and cleansing the system. They would take castor oil and cleanse out the system. Those kinds of purges and so on. Some of those are found to be even used now today in traditional medicine. So I think there's a lot of lessons, and certainly what we can take from our grandparents is the value of exercise. They didn't call it exercise; they just call it life then. And my grandmother didn't exercise, but she also did sit on the couch all day watching TV. She was up doing things all everywhere around, lifting, doing things, whatever. I mean, when you look at something as simple as using the bathroom, back in the days, people squatted to use the bathroom, to use the toilet, and you kept your leg muscles strong. You can just squat. You kept your body limber. Now you sit on a toilet in a sitting position, not having to use squat muscles at all. So these are the kinds of things that that we don't think of, but life back then allowed for people to be healthy almost without even thinking about it. Of course, they didn't have the modern drugs that we have to quickly cure things. They didn't have the antibiotics. If you got an infection in those days, things that would kill you then wouldn't kill you now, because they didn't have those kind of fast-acting drugs. But it was amazing because people adopted a lot of things then that we are now looking back to.
As you talk about squatting, I have a gardener, a man who comes and cuts the grass and cuts the plants and whatever else, and he must be in his early 70s, but his favorite position is squatting. He squats to smoke his cigarettes in between pushing the lawnmower or trimming the thing. And I am amazed, if I go down like that, Lord help me how I'm going to get up from that position. And he's thin like a rake. I don't know what he eats, but he seems to be doing very well with that. Dr. Ramnarine, if a patient comes and tells you, well, I'm eating this fruit or that vegetable instead of Kafanol and some other painkiller, what would you say to that patient?
Well,
in a generalized kind of way, of course.
It depends on what the patient is coming to see us for, all right?
Yeah.
As a doctor, you make a diagnosis by examining the patient and doing various testing with the patient. We have instruments that we use. And based on what they're saying, once it is compatible with their health as a doctor, as a human being, I would recommend that they continue. You see, just to sidestep a point that Barry was making earlier on. In every village that I knew when I was growing up, there was a medicine man and a medicine woman. Every village. And if you had a problem, you go to the medicine woman, like a medical issue, and she would know what type, and they worked intuitively. They would go and fetch a particular herb, and they would probably make the brew for you and give it to you, and people had results. That's where we grew up. When you had something that dealt with your physical body, I remember I was chosen to play cricket for a team in the village. And I got up in the morning and I had really severe back pain, and I was a bowler. So I couldn't bowl at all. And the man came who was the medicine man in the village, and he said, Harry, why are you not playing? I said, well, I have severe pains. I can't even turn my arm around. He said, come. And he put his hand on my chest, and he asked me to lean on it. And all I could hear from my tailbone, all crack, 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 crack. And he said, go and play. And I was able to go, and all the pain disappeared. And I was able to bowl about 6 overs, 7 overs in the match, without any pains.
Yeah.
We have lost that tradition.
Yeah. As you say that, I did an interview with Wendell Motley, silver medalist, gold medalist at Pan Am Games, etc. And he said when he was a young boy, 16, 17 or so on, he got, it's something in his leg. I don't remember exactly what it was. But there was a healer man. His father took him to several doctors all over the place. And he met this healer man who was working in the parliament in some kind of condition or the other. And he took Wendell to the healer man, and the healer man cracked his back. And since then, according to Wendell, he never got the pain and the injury that he had at that point in time. And he went on to win a silver medal at the Olympic Games. So something must have been wonderful in the old people medicine, if we put it like that. Yes, gentlemen?
Well, you see, before we had chiropractors and all these osteopaths, we had the local guys who knew intuitively what to do to fix the body physically. And it worked. Mm-hmm. That's my experience with that.
Sure. But I know, I'm coming back to the question, I know that there are doctors who, if you tell them, well, I stopped taking chemical X as that you prescribed for me, and I found a fruit or a vegetable which is working well, they seem to get irritated by that thought or that action of yours, and would prefer that you stay on the medication that is developed by the chemists in laboratories and all of that. How do you all, both of you, how do you react to that kind of reaction from the medicine man?
Well, whatever is prescribed by a physician and patient comes to me, I do not get involved in, I never tell a patient, stop your drugs. What I will say to them is, if we're treating you and you are improving with your health, which we can monitor, then when you go to your doctor, they would see results. They would see probably the blood sugars are better controlled. They may ask you to reduce the drugs, and they do that. I don't get involved in that because I don't think it is right for me to tell a patient, look, stop your drugs. So I ask all my patients, stay on your drugs if you are improving. If for instance, we're treating a diabetic patient and the blood sugars are going low, I would say to them, look, please get back to your doctor as soon as possible. Explain to him what is happening. He may then need to reduce the amount of drugs or the frequency of the drugs so that you are now better or able to manage your health with less drugs. So as your body improves, sometimes the patient would, like Barry mentioned, the high blood pressure. And when he found out what was the background of it, apart from improving his lifestyle and his health, his body is going through a healing phase. And the chances are with time, just knocking off the last bit as the caffeine, the blood pressure eventually settled itself. And it is not what we're about is not about having to take a pill for the rest of your life, because one of the most important things that I recognized when I worked in Port Spain for the 5 years I was working in internal medicine, the medical wards, for about 3.5 years out of that. And what I felt disappointed with is that patients who were having their blood sugar controlled with drugs and the high blood pressure control, and they still would end up with the end result, like problems with the nerves in the body, the neurovascular system, the problems in the blood vessels in the kidneys, in the eyes, in the heart. Despite we controlling the blood sugar, I came to the conclusion that it's not so much the blood sugar levels, it is the insulin levels which is creating all the inflammation in the body. And what I advise most of my patients, and Barry said it very nicely, that I don't consume anything with sugar. I mean, you need some sweet things in your life. You need the sweet flavor, this taste. But I get it from fruits, and I don't overdo fruits because the fruit is a complete food. It has vitamins, minerals, enzymes, and so on. And that balances the sugar. But if you take sugar that is refined, as like white sugar, or even brown sugar, that does not behave like a food. It behaves like a drug. It is actually a right spin food, and which is going to destroy your health. That's what I found. And I stopped using sugar about 40 years ago. In fact, I made a wild statement and I suffered as a result of it. I had a sample of white sugar in a container and I said, this is the devil in a crystalline form. Everybody came down with me like a ton of bricks, Oh, I could say it. But I was just trying to make a point,
All right.
What I would say, Tony, quickly.
Sorry, Nori, before you go on, just to inform our listeners is that we are talking about different approaches to health through medical experiences and procedures, and through some natural engagement like walking. Both Barry Collymore and Dr. Ramnarine have talked about exercise, about the sun, on beating on your shoulders and so on, and those elements of the medication which we don't get off the shelf. And we are, exploring the possibility of quality health, better health for us all, especially as you advance in age, and I suppose your natural protective measures are not as protective as they used to be in your youth. So Barry Collymore, you wanted to say something?
What I would say to just add to what Dr. Ramnarine was saying is that if you get yourself checked regularly, every year, you get a proper comprehensive blood panel of everything, you can see trends over the years. Let's think blood sugar. The marker that a lot of people use on your A1C test is 6.0, right, Dr. Ramnarine, to see diabetic. Yeah. But you are at 5.5 next year. You're at 5.6 next year. At 5.7. It's trending in the wrong direction. You're oftentimes, I say this to people who do the exercise. You didn't gain the weight in 2 months, so don't expect to lose it in 2 months. You have to look for trends, and if you see something is trending in the wrong direction, take action before it gets. Don't wait till it gets above 6 and says, "Oh, I'm a diabetic." No, address it before it gets. Once you see it trending in the wrong direction, and you can look at this for almost anything in your body, start to ask your doctor questions. How can I get this? This looks like it's going in the wrong direction. How can I? But in order for that to happen, we have to have people committed to their health, committed to getting checked every single year, proper comprehensive check. Go to your doctor, get checked, get everything checked once a year, or if you have a greater risk, more than once a year. But that's how you can pick up things are going in the wrong direction. We do it for our cars. We get our cars serviced once or twice a year. Some people more often. You get everything checked in your car, oil, brake fluid, everything. Why wouldn't you do that for your own body?
Precisely.
Both Barry and Dr. Ramnarine, men, and I know this is a generalization, but perhaps it's a generalization that has some kind of validity, is that men are less likely to check on their health status than women are. I know from my own experience about my wife, she seems to check all the time, and I'm quietly saying, I don't say this to her, of course, that if you're too hurt, you don't have to go to the doctor for that. I don't know if it's part of the male mental apparatus. Maybe we're afraid, deathly afraid. I remember, I think I have written it publicly. I had heart surgery, 16, 17 years ago. And I remember after, getting back to walking and so on, I met a good friend who I went to university at Mona in, and he said he had heard about my health, and I told him and so on, and he said, boy, if I feel any heart business, I'd rather dead, you're going to know doctor. I thought that was amazing. He said, how do you deal with that male attitude towards going to a doctor? Dr. Ramnarine?
Well, when you look at male and female, right? The symbol of a man is the circle and an outward arrow, pointing outwards. So the energies of a man is always outwards. This is how I see it. When you look at the female, it's again the circle. I call it the circle of spirit, and you have an equal arm cross at the bottom, which refers to matter. So spirit overcoming matter, which is the female. To put that in perspective, a man's energy is always outward. A woman's energy is inward. So they are more in tune with their emotions and their feelings and so on. It takes a lot for a man to tune into that unless he gets, like, say, a massive heart attack and has pains, which he can feel and sense, and he's short of breath and he thinks he's going to die and so on. Or if he has an infection and, he's lying on the bed and he's not definitely, completely low in energy, then he would reach out for help. But generally, men don't really get involved too much in their emotions and their feelings. And therefore, like Barry is saying, at least once a year, just go and get a checkup, because that is important in this modern age, because we live in an environment that's so polluted. We live in an environment with so much stress. You wake up every morning and there's another 2 people murdered, and all of that impacts on us in a stressful way. So we need to be, positive about our health, because who looks after your health? It's not the doctor, not your neighbor, not your wife or your husband. You have to look after your health, and you have to put things in place. We have covered, to both of us, we have covered quite a number of things that we can do. Prevention, then, what I call preventative medicine. And then when you have a problem, seek help. And that's what it is all about. Mm-hmm. But you're right, maybe we may have another spin on this whole issue of the male and female energy.
Yeah, I must admit I was completely, befuddled by my friend's reaction. He swore that, if he has something, well, boy, that has to carry it. And I'm not talking about an illiterate, foolish man. I'm talking about a man who was that postgraduate university education. He said, me and going, boy, me going there. Barry, is that a male ego thing?
Yeah, I think it is. We are disappointingly so in the Caribbean. We have this kind of attitude to our health, and a very cavalier attitude to our health, which to our detriment, and to the detriment of our society, where many men now are facing the impact of chronic diseases. And what I'm noticing, just from an anecdotal observation, not in research, is that it's going to these NCDs, and including obesity, it's going to hitting younger and younger groups of the population, which is scary. And I want to say something, Tony, and I give a story. I have a friend who's building a hotel in Mexico, and we were together in Cancun one day, and it was a big hotel, so 1,000 men went on strike one day, and he was on the phone, and I was wondering, how does he recover from this? So I said, what happened? The guys went on strike. He said, well, I hired the other company, another company. So he said, I'll resolve this with these guys, but I'm gonna have another company on the job in the morning. And I thought to myself, this is interesting, and it's a good anecdote for the Caribbean. We in the Caribbean, with our small populations, do not have the kind of resources, human resource capacity, that many of the large countries have. We just don't. There's no especially in the smaller islands. There's no other 1,000 men to hire. There's no other 100 policemen to hire if your police force gets sick. So therefore, health is not just about protecting the individual, it's about protecting society. We have to look at what I call workforce protection, in terms of protecting our workforce and from disease, because your workforce is the engine of your society. And if you every year the health span of your workforce continues to be eroded, then your productivity as a nation will continue to decline. So it is in the interest of every single Caribbean government to protect their workforce population by instituting preventative measures designed to protect the health span of their workforce. This is too vital and too key part of our development, and we are not looking down the road. And I've said before, there will come a time where, if we do not address this problem and have more robust preventative health mechanisms in our societies, there'll come a time where we become overwhelmed by the number of sick people in our community, and we will not have the human resource capacity for replacement, or we will not have the human resource capacity for continued sustainability of our workforce. Is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
You have a situation now where childhood obesity is hitting. It's something that you never saw before in the region. It is debilitating, not just from a health point of view, but from a productivity standpoint in our region. We've got to address it.
As you talk about the NCDs, Barry, and Dr. Ramnarine will know perhaps even better than us the impact and the effect of it on the Caribbean population. It came to me that probably 15, may even be 20 years ago, there was a major conference. It probably was about 15, 20 years ago, because Patrick Manning was the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago at that point in time. There was a major NCD conference at the Zen Holiday Inn in Port of Spain, when there were lots of figures and analyses about exactly what you're talking about, the impact of treating these diseases, preventable or controllable, And I don't know what happened to the report. I remember there was an interim report that we reported on, and there was supposed to be a final report. I don't know if it was published, printed, if it was released to the regional community. Professor Georgia Lane was the leader of that group at that point in time. So that, in keeping with the whole business of governments not paying attention or not paying sufficient attention to the high cost of health care. Every time in the last 10 years and more that we analyze the budget, the highest costs are in security, education, and health. And the point is, somebody made the point that we can't continue building billion-dollar hospitals. We have to do some prevention. Is sufficient of that being done, Dr. Ramnarine?
I will agree that we're not putting enough attention in that direction, because it's easier in the practice of medicine to just dispense up with a prescription, and it cuts everything short and it gets the patient out of the way. But that isn't solving the problem. I think we have gone away, seriously. The pendulum has gone over into this medication and medication and medication. And what we are discussing here, we're talking about preventive medicine. We're talking about lifestyle changes. And we're not putting emphasis on that, because the doctors, even in the system, the public health system, they don't have the time, because they are so overwhelmed. They don't have the time to deal with these areas of health. And that's a problem we are faced with. I mean, when I see a person, I spend at least an hour with a patient. But they don't have the time for that in the public system. At the same time, we have another problem. We look at the rising cost of the private care system in Trinidad and Tobago, meaning that you have to go and do a procedure or whatever. It is climbing all the time. I feel in another few years, people will not be able to afford private care. And then the system, the governmental system, the private system, the government system that is in place to provide health for the nation, they will be so overwhelmed within a few years that it will not be able to cope. And when you have a patient in front of you, you don't have the time to sit with them to talk about what we are talking about. And that is the lifestyle, the prevention, the exercise, the sun, whatever, all of those. The doctors do not have that time because they are overwhelmed. And I know doctors who would say to me, look, if they're spending 10 minutes with a patient, somebody will come and say, look, you have to move on. Next patient. And that's the state of the public health system right now.
Yeah. They're hooked into a spiral of the next patient and the next fee. I don't want to badger them too much, but
no, we don't need to go in that direction. We're looking at the reality of what it is all about. Unless we have other individuals who are part and parcel of the process of good health in the country. I agree totally that we should be looking and putting a lot of resources in that direction to prevent, because if we look at the lifestyle of people today, we look at the quality of foods that they're eating. Most of it is unhealthy. Mm-hmm. We are using when we use coconut oil, when people were frying with lard, check how many diabetics we had in those days. Check how many heart attacks we had in those days. I'm just speaking from my own experience, not from statistics. But when the modern type of oils came into the market and we got rid of all those fats that are considered to be high in cholesterol and so on, we moved into seed oils. And most seed oils are extracted with solvents and refined. And so even the oils are not as healthy as it used to be in the past. I would say coconut oil is probably the best oil that we should be using.
When I go in the supermarket and I see some, I'm not going to call names, but I see some of these oils and I wonder, okay, if I see coconut oil, well, I know it's coconut it has come from. But I see some oils which I can't detect where they have come from. There are these names that don't bring a memory of anything that exists in the real world. But gentlemen, I want, and I know neither of you is a professional in mental diseases, but I'm sure that from the practical point of view, Barry must have felt something mentally going through his medical trials, as it were, and I'm sure that Dr. Ramnarine has thought about, the mental aspect of diseases that impact upon our health and our well-being. Barry, let me hear you first.
Sorry, mental challenges?
Mental challenges, I suppose, brought about by your health condition. And when I say mental challenges, I'm not talking about deep psychological and psychosomatic diseases in your instance. Just being around and thinking that this thing, I have X, Y, Z, and it's impacting on me, and I might die walking around the corner. How impactful is the mental state given our health conditions?
I think it's really important. I've seen it in friends of mine who had a positive mindset and have overcome disease. I think having that is extremely important. I've also seen people who've gotten bad news and took it on and deteriorated really quickly, to the point where people start to say that, oh, you better that you didn't know, because the person found out that they died, which I don't subscribe to at all. But I think that a lot of us, the body, they say the body has a fight or flight mechanism, and a lot of us are in the flight mechanism when it comes to our health. We prefer not to know. We run away from getting testing. We run away from checking things in our body. We have to fight. We got to check things. We got to get into that mental state where we got to check things, and then we got to fight it to say, look, I want to know how I can combat this. How can I not be a diabetic? How can I not be a hypertensive patient? How can I beat obesity? This is the kind of mindset that we need. People need to, but it will start with doctors giving people, I think, that type of information. Not to say I'm putting you on a pill for life, but to say, you know what, let's try and beat this. Let's try and beat this together. You may have to take this pill for a certain time, but I don't want you on this pill past a year or two. In this, I think that if you're playing cricket and the captain says, listen, boys, I want 300 runs today. This is how I want it done. I think you have a better chance of getting to 300 runs than if you just send everybody out there to bat and you don't know what target you're going towards. And sometimes I think that in a sense, health is approached like that, where somebody like when I thought I had a high blood pressure, the doctor said, no, your blood pressure is high. You don't have high blood pressure. Your blood pressure is high. Let us find the problem and let's fix it. I think that is some things, of course, even science today, as modern as it is, cannot, some things we just can't beat. But there are many things that we could beat, and most of those non-communicable diseases, which make up a large percentage of why people are ill in the Caribbean, most, if not all of those, and Dr. Ramnarine can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think most of those we can beat. Most of those non-communicable diseases, if not all of them, we can beat. So I think the mental aspect is important, where people get into a fight mechanism, where they say, let me fight for my health. Let me check things. Let me look at trends. Let me see something trending in the wrong direction. I want to combat it. Rather than the flight, boy, I don't want to know. That's the, I'm not going to a doctor. Go to your doctor, get things checked, and then ask your doctor for solutions, which may include medication. But how do I get the medication, and then how do I get myself off of it? What do I need to do?
Dr. Ramnarine, I'm not putting you in the position of being a mental health doctor in the professional kind of sense, but practicing as a doctor, interacting with patients, I am sure that it's a central element for you to think about and talk to your patients about, and your patients telling you about their mental condition, given what they have and all of the fears that are impacting on their minds because of a physical disease.
Well, the thing is that, what I have found as a doctor, as a medical doctor for close to 50 years, is that you have to spend some time with your patients if you're going to do good work. If a doctor says, this is your diagnosis X, and he leaves you with that X, that diagnosis, you're in a mess. Mentally, you're going to be pulled down into a very bad state, whether the diagnosis is a cancer or whatever. But if you spend time with your patients, and we need to get more compassion back into medicine, the practice of medicine. I think we have lost the compassion. Seriously, I've observed this as a doctor in the hospital, and I've seen this many places as well. What I'm talking about is that if whatever each one of us, three of us, we have, if someone could say to us, you know what, you can beat this, you can get over this. Here's a plan, 1, 2, 3, and let's go with that. But it takes a little bit of time. And if the professional person, whether it's Barry or myself or any other doctor, could put across to this patient, whether they have a stage 2 cancer or stage 3 cancer or whatever, it doesn't matter the disease. I'm just saying, if the patient can get something from the doctor that gives them some bit of hope. But you see, we have lost that in the practice of medicine. It's cut and dry. Okay, go and do this test, go and do this biopsy, go and do this blood work. And the patient is cut off. They go home and they start thinking, well, am I going to die with this? And no one has said to them in a professional sense, look, you know what, you can beat this. That's what Barry has been telling us over the last hour or more, right? That we need to get our minds in a state where we have at least some bit of hope, that we have a positive way of thinking. And it can only come, it doesn't come from your spouse, it doesn't come from your children, it comes from a professional. And you come back to getting checkups from time to time, investigating whatever you have, and relating. But what I have seen in my practice, when a patient leaves my office, they learn exercises, they learn breathing techniques, and they get enough information on diet in order so that they can go home and start doing the work on their own. And if you can say to them a positive statement that would say to basically, look, you know what, it may take you a few years, but you can beat this illness. The patient goes home loaded with information. They're now excited. But if you just say to the patient, well, here's a prescription, and go and do this other test and that test, you know what the patient is left with a mental state that is feeling at a loss. They've had no guidance, no instruction as to how they can proceed and maybe be alive in another 5 years. And I think that is what we have to change in the practice of medicine. But as I said, the system is overwhelmed. The cost of primary care in the private sector is increasing all the time. No, I'm not getting involved in that because the cost is what it is. But we are at a place where the doctors don't have the time to sit with the patient and assure the patient. You know, many people you and I know who have had cancer and they survive cancer. Why is it that those survive cancer and another person may have cancer and all fall down? And they go home and they're depressed. They get into a state, they stop eating, they cannot sleep. I know a patient who was falsely diagnosed because, I'll tell you what, they had these testing done from her banking profession. And she got the wrong diagnosis. It got mixed up with another patient. You know, she lost about 12 pounds in about a week and a half. Sure. No sleep, not eating, stressed, and she didn't have a cancer. Yeah. So I give you that as an example, and we went through the whole investigation, sent her for more tests, and then there was nothing, absolutely nothing. There was a mistake made. she got the wrong reports from another person who had a lump in the breast.
Yeah.
So mentally, just to say that if we could spend time enough to encourage the patient or the person who is sick and give them enough, and it doesn't take a lot of time to do that, and the patient can leave in a positive state. And I think that's what the good doctoring is all about.
Dr. Ramnarine, I don't want to put you in an invidious position, but do you feel that, I mean, you must have some sense of the kind of training, the kind of practice that I will frame it in modern doctors. I don't know what the time frame is for a modern doctor, last, say, 40 years or so. Are we improving? And I say we as a society, are we improving in terms of, training doctors, having doctors practice in a manner that will deal with all kinds of ailments, not only somebody who looks after broken legs and broken arms and so on, but are we getting a holistic doctor on the scene, as it were?
But I don't think that is part of the training of doctors at all. Not at all. I think that we are training doctors in a very efficient way to do the things that they want us to do. Meaning, okay, you clinical acumen, so you can diagnose illnesses, you do investigations, and then you prescribe. And we have cut it into that narrow, space that there isn't enough time. For me, I look at it the other way around, as Barry was just saying, that patients leave my office with enough simple exercises to do to start the process of healing in their bodies, and the basic things that they need to follow. And when you could do that with from your heart, I can tell you, patients follow the instructions.
Mm-hmm.
They do, because they trust you. And you're coming across because you are concerned about their health, and the way you bring across the information, they will take it and go with it.
Yeah, gentlemen, we've come to the end of the program now, but I just want to give both of you 30 seconds each to your final comment with regard to all of what we've talked about. Barry, from the personal perspective of dealing with the afflictions which were attendant upon your life and how you dealt with them, and Dr. Ramnarine talking about his practice. Barry?
Yeah, I just want to encourage everyone to really take charge of their own health, and your health is all about you. So you have to get your regular checks. Don't forget diet, sleep, exercise, stress avoidance. Those will be the key things. And then from a regional perspective and a Caribbean perspective, I think that our governments need to invest more in preventing disease, preventing hospitalization. And we can do a number of different things with that. We can really bring this home from the school level, and getting kids to exercise every day is one of the starts that we and get them to eat properly in schools. Those are the foundation things that we need to do. But I believe that preventative health protects our society from a health point of view, and it guarantees the sustainability and continued productivity of our workforce, of our very finite small workforce in the Caribbean.
Dr. Ramnarine, your closing statement.
Someone made a statement: health is not everything, but everything without health is nothing.
Yeah.
And that is something that we should think about. The next thing is that I feel seriously that we should be starting in the primary school, start introducing talks, whether it is done from the Ministry of Education, so that you start getting, as Barry is putting it, enough information starting from young. Start talking to them about health, because it is so important. That's the period when the adult will eventually come out of that stage and get to a place where they suddenly start to notice something is happening. Their bodies are not in a healthy state. So what I'm saying is that we should go back to that primary school level and start training children the type of food they should eat, the exercises that they should do to keep themselves healthy. And once they start at that early age, it becomes a natural habit. And you get a high in that,
I had a very practical experience with that when our children, 3 of them, were going to a primary school. And I think I can call the name of the primary school. It's Bishop's Junior School, whatever the official name is, for children. There came a principal who banned soft drinks. School has a, whatever you call it, a place where they sell drinks and eats and all of that. And she banned the sale of soft drinks in the school. Of course, it was not popular with a lot of children and their parents, but she stood her ground and she made a determination that it should not continue in the school. She did another wonderful thing which we haven't talked about. She played all kinds of music, at the start of the school, in the intermission of the school, and she argued that that was part of the whole learning process and the health process for the students of the school. So there are all kinds of ways that we can deal in a better way with our health. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. Dr. Harry Ramnarine and my friend and colleague Barry Collymore, who has not, he told me that he just told me just now that he is not abandoned journalism. I have a question about that, but I don't. I know for sure that he has not abandoned West Indies cricket. Dr. Ramnarine is in that same kind of grief stage that we all suffer from. But gentlemen, thank you very much, and next time, take care, Sir Charles, and Sister,
thank you very much
about the rerun of this program.
Thank you very much, Tony, and thank you very much for your guest passing through this afternoon and for making us what it is here at New Era TT Radio, sharing information. All right, so people, this program will be run again tomorrow morning, just at around 8:20 a.m. on newera ttradio.com. All right, stay with us.